welcome to my kitchen. So today we're going to be making carameled apples. So before you start your caramel, make sure your apples are all washed and the sticks are in and you're ready to go, because once the caramel's done you need to start dipping them immediately while the caramel's still hot, because it sets up pretty fast. So I have in my pan the butter, the brown sugar, the corn syrup, and the condensed milk. And you just mix all that together on, a medium heat. Now the trick with this caramel is you need to stir it the entire time. So you just keep stirring the whole time and you want it bubbling and boiling. So bear with me as we make this caramel. So depending on how your stove works and how hot it is, the caramel process can take anywhere from, 15 to 25 minutes. Okay, so I have a really nice candy thermometer that's a digital one that I can put in my pan. And I've done this before when I've made my candies. But my very favorite way to test the caramel is in a bowl of ice water. And when I know that the caramel's getting close, I'll show you how I test that caramel to make sure that it's just the right consistency for the apples. This is what the caramel looks like when you very first start cooking it. And be sure to scrape the sides as you're stirring the caramel. You can use any type of spoon you like when you're making your candies. This one is my favorite. It's from Williams-Sonoma. It's got a flat bottom so I can scrape the bottom of the pan. And it's heat resistant, so it never turns a different color. I've never burned the bottom. It's just a really great spoon. Here's the bowl of ice water that I'm going to test the caramel in when I know that it's almost there. So this is what the caramel should look like when you're cooking it. It does boil a little. You don't want it to be a rolling boil, but bubbles here and there. But just keep scraping the bottom and the sides so that there's no burning of the caramel on the bottom. And just watch your temperature. If you have to turn it down a little bit, if you think there's too many bubbles, then you can go ahead and do that. The caramel starts thickening and kind of changing color. That's when you want to start testing it either in your water or with your thermometer. If you're going to use a candy thermometer, you want to cook the caramel to about 242. This is how I test in water. I just drip it in there and let it sit while I'm still stirring. Then I take my other hand and I start pulling the caramel and playing with it in my fingers. You'll see this is really soft still. So I put it back in the water, get it cooled. It's getting close. It's starting to form like caramel, but this would just fall off the apple at this stage. So that's not ready yet. Okay, so I'm going to test the caramel again. Just want it to be that chewy, but not break your break your tooth on the caramel. I just kind of play around with it with my fingers. Now that is getting really close. It's kind of forming like a caramel would. All right, let's do one final test. think it's really close. And if you'll look, this caramel is kind of turned a caramely color, and it's thicker than it was, you know, in the beginning. Yeah, I think this is probably really close. Okay, it's starting to be, yeah, I think it's done. So, time to take it off the heat and dip the apples. Okay, here we go on the dipping. So you're going to put your apple in there and you're just kind of going to twirl it around. And then you're going to let it stand up like this. And I just kind of twirl the apple to get the caramel off. Now you can either scrape the pan or I just let it go onto the parchment. You want to do this pretty quick because the caramel cools and it starts setting and it's hard to do. Make sure you use parchment paper. If you use wax paper, the caramel will stick and you won't get the apple off the wax paper. Now, if I tried to lift these carameled apples off this parchment paper right now, they would stick, but once they're dry, they come right off. So when you're down to probably your last apple with the caramel, it's gonna look pretty bad, but it's still gonna taste good. And if you just take the caramel from the pan and kind of put it on it and stir it around, this one you can eat and save for yourself if you don't want to give it away, or you will not see it like this if you're going to dip it in other stuff. Now, if you have leftover caramel that you want to scrape out of this pan, it's yummy to just put it on some parchment paper, and after it cools, you can cut it up into caramels. So one recipe of the caramel makes about 12 apples. These apples are a little bit smaller than I normally use. These two right here are bigger. I tend to use the bigger ones if I can find them, but I bought these smaller ones on sale at Central Market. If you'll look, the caramel bubbles on these apples. Not all of them have it. This one doesn't, but most of them have the little bubble marks. I do not know why it does that, but it doesn't matter. Once you put other things on this and drizzle chocolate and put sprinkles or Oreos or whatever type of toppings you want on these apples, you don't see it. And even if you just want to give somebody a carameled apple without anything, just the caramel, it's still really yummy. So I was going to show you that if you wanted to put nuts, chopped nuts on the bottom, once you twirl the apple in the caramel, you would have to sit it down in the nuts, chopped nuts, and then put it on the parchment paper. You would never take it off here and do it now. So you just let these cool now, and once they're cooled, then you can decorate them or put them in bags, however you want.